Hey guys, how you doing? Today we're going to be reviewing Marvel's Eternals. Now, I don't think it's against me to say that this is the most controversial Marvel film, MCU film, up to this point. Now, this is the first negatively rated Marvel film of all time. This is the first negatively rated one. Now, what does that tell you about the MCU? It's just insane. I cannot believe that this film is the first one to have a negative and rotten rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, it baffles me, because let me start by saying this. One, it is not as bad as the critics are making out. It's just not. Two, I can think of at least 5 films that should have been rated rotten and haven't been. And the fact that they've been rated higher than this, it's just beyond me. And then 3, that brings me to another point. How much does critics' scores really matter anymore? Because I think, if you guys didn't know, this even broke the amount of money made for the Marvel films after COVID and after, that whole massive global thing just basically ruined cinemas and ruined films. They haven't been able to break 100 million yet, and Eternals opening weekend got over 90 million. Like, it's just crazy. And I think Eternals is a good film. I'll say that for now. I think this is a good film, but yeah, it has so many problems. Like, it has so many that just I wasn't expecting, because this is Chloe Zhao. This is the best director in the world of this moment. And yeah, there's so many writing, script issues, just choices that they made that I didn't think Kevin Feige would let slide. There's something fundamentally wrong with this film. Yet the things that work so well that it is a good film. I think this is a good film, but there are so many things wrong with this. Now, let me just say this. Other than The Incredible Hulk, I don't think I've never watched an MCU film that really doesn't feel like an MCU film. So there's little references here and there, but overall, this just feels like a Chloe Zhao film. And that's very surprising from Disney, because Disney usually, they are very controlling over their cinematic universe. And I remember watching a podcast back in the days of Phase 2, and it was about, should Marvel give more creative freedom to their directors? As a lot of Phase 2 felt samey, it felt very formulaic. That's a word used quite a lot. But I think the question now should be, well, is there a perfect balance, or was Disney in the right for having that much control? Because it clearly worked, and then now you're giving a lot of creative freedom for Chloe Zhao, and it doesn't have that MCU core feeling. This didn't feel like an MCU film. It just didn't. And I don't know. I feel like there has to be a balance, but I think it needs to be like a 60 to 40% split, where 60% Disney is in control. They're making sure this feels like an MCU property. We're comfortable saying that this is part of our bigger plan. And like the Inhumans for Phase 3. Inhumans, everyone forgets about. That was in the Phase 3 panel. And that was a TV show at the time, which is lucky. If that was a film, then what do? Do they still bury it? It was a lot easier to bury because it was just some little crappy like CW type show. But with Eternals, if this doesn't come across well, how do you deal with that? Because they put in major MCU changing events into this film. It's just mad. And the ending to this film, oh my God, this film is huge in scale. If this is the furthest we've gone with, say, Infinity War and Endgame, Eternals goes like this. It's just crazy to me. And yeah, let's actually get into this film, because I could talk for so long about what this film does outside of the actual in film world. That I can talk about what this affects in terms of business for so long. So let's just go into this film. the cast. I think the cast do as good as a job as they can. I think Angelina Jolie is severely underused. I think a lot of the cast don't need to be there. This is a group of about 12, and it's like, we did not need this many characters. We really didn't. It's overkill. And the reason, if someone came up to me and went, oh, but look, they did that in Endgame and it worked there, so why has it not worked here? One, Endgame had pre-existing characters. We've had multiple films with those characters. Here we're introducing these characters that are all basically the same. Let's be honest. Like, the depth that they go into the backstories with, it's not done well enough, because they're trying to juggle the Deviants plot, the Celestial plot, the where the hell have the Eternals been plot, the origin stories, the threat level now, what's happening now. Then there's a little plot twist thing. There's a romance story. That's 7 different things they're trying to juggle, as well as introduce us all to this massive group of new characters. And then some characters start dying. I think at least 3 are killed quite early on. Or maybe not early on, sprinkled throughout. And it's like, they're treating this as some major scene. And spoilers right now, I'm giving spoilers right now. When Salma Hayek dies, did they think I would care? And I'm saying that in all seriousness, because we'd had like 12 minutes with her. Her actually being a person and talking and interacting with people, interacting with the group. We'd had about 12 minutes. So I don't think the script it has so many problems, and it baffles me that 20 years, not 20 years, but it baffles me that about 14 years into the MCU, where they've had so much success, it should be second nature by now of how to introduce characters. If this was the first Guardians film, and the first Guardians film was instead the Eternals, and we got this exact film, I think it would be looked on a lot more lightly, because people would be like, oh, fair enough, this is their first sort of, time with a group of new characters, introducing them in that one film. This is the first time they've attempted it. It's fine. They'll learn from this. They did Guardians of the Galaxy so well. So well. You want to know why? Because they had creative control. It felt like an MCU property. Even though it was set out in outer space with characters that we'd never heard of. Each character had a great backstory. Gone into with a lot of depth. And the characters that didn't need that much were just there for comic relief and stuff like that, like Drax. It knew what it needed to do. And with this film, the reason Guardians can do that, in my opinion, is because, not just because there's way too many characters here, but they're all the same character. You're trying to make all of these characters interesting. You can't, because they're all from the same place. They're all, spoilers warning again, robots. They all have cool different abilities, but it's like the X-Men. We didn't need this group. It could have been the X-Men. We really didn't need this group. And by the way, I really like this film. I do. I'll go into positives in a bit. I'm just getting my negatives out of the way. But the reason Guardians works is because everyone is their own dynamic. Everyone has their own core personality. Everyone is different from each other. Gamora is this fierce warrior, but realistically, she's just a scared girl that was taken from her family that we find out in Infinity War. And we found that out, and it's been hinted at throughout those Guardians films as well. Then you have Nebula, who comes across as this hard, cold, icy, just evil person. And she literally is just a woman that has nothing. She doesn't have a sister. She wants that relationship with her sister. She can't have that. She wants to please her father because he's always looked down on her. She can't have that. So it's literally like everyone has their own things that are interesting about them. And the Eternals just did not do a good job of giving these people interesting backstories and traits and personalities. And they just came across as robotic. I wonder why, but they could have done it. What I'm saying is there's potential here. The cast is great. Thena could have been so good. Angelina Jolie, I was looking forward to her performance so much. And she's just in this cliche MacGuffin plot of, oh, I can't control myself. Every time we need you to, you'll glitch out because we need that for the plot. It's like, it baffles me. It baffles me. Oh, it's just a shame. But anyway, let's get into positives. Chloe Zhao behind the camera is an absolute gift. She is the Ronaldo of directors, in my opinion. It's just stunning. There's no artificial shots. Each shot feels real, and the shots are just, they're just so good to look at. They're just such amazingly presented shots with great colors that are vivid. They're real. They're set in real life, and I just think that was done so well. So yeah, I think the cinematography in this is amazing. The directing is amazing in a visual standpoint. It's great. Now, the choreography, I think the fight choreography overall was really interesting. I thought particularly a character who, by the way, I could not tell you half of the characters' actual names in the films. All I remember is Cersei, Icarus, Bongo, Druig, Ajak, Thena, Gilgamesh. But the one I'm trying to think of is the fast one. That whoever has the super speed, her fighting choreography was so fun to watch. It was done really, really well. So yeah, I think the fighting choreography was done well. I think the plot with Black Knight, who we can't wait to see him in the post-credit scene. I cannot wait to see where he goes. He's such a cool character. Anyway, we'll get to post-credit scenes in a bit. But yeah, I thought that was done great. I thought the eventual team up of the Eternals coming together was great. I think the plot twist works. Genuinely, the plot twist works. But having her death be so early on, thinking we should care about it when we just hadn't had the time. Something doesn't sit with me right there. But the actual plot twist itself is fine. But then this brings me back to the negatives. There's so many flip-floppy emotional changes. For example, Sprite stabs everyone in the back just because she fancies this Icarus guy. What? You've known these people for thousands of years. They're your family, and you've just stabbed them in the back all of a sudden because the plot needed you to. That's not how you would act. And they wouldn't just forgive you. That's not how they would act. You literally stabbed Cersei in the final bit of this film. And then 5 minutes later in a scene, they're hugging it out and she's like, I'm going to miss you. You just tried to kill her. What do you mean? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So yeah, anyway, let's get to these post-credit scenes because they're actually quite interesting. Now, the Black Knight one was pretty cool. We saw a really cool sword. It had like this effect that attracted it to his finger. I don't know enough about the character, but I've seen images and a few sort of storylines, I'm pretty sure. He just looks cool. His costume looks really cool, so I can't wait for that. Then you have Harry Styles. Yes, Harry Styles as Thanos' brother. I don't know that character at all, but when it said brother of Thanos, I was like, okay, I'm interested now. I truly am. That's going to be so cool. So yeah, I don't know what to think about this film overall because it was very entertaining. This is another positive. I mean, this might sound stupid, but the exposition is a positive for me. If you're a fan of the MCU, that is the closest thing that links this to the MCU because every bit of exposition is interesting to the larger scale of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, it just is. So every time there was like a visual representation whilst they were explaining, or even just them talking, it was just interesting to me. That might just be me. But yeah, I think that every bit of exposition about the Celestials, their purpose, how the actual universe functions. We learn about how the universe of the MCU functions, and that blows my mind that they went into such depth. So I'm glad that this film was as ambitious as it was, although it failed in some parts. I think getting me intrigued in the larger scale and larger reasons of the MCU, I think that really worked for them. So yeah, overall, this film is interesting because I'm between a 6 and a 7 out of 10. And I think the bits that work so well that I will have to give this a 7 out of 10. But there's so much wrong, fundamentally wrong, that it's just a shame. Oh yeah, by the way, the humour was on and off. Sometimes it worked. The bits that worked was the director character. It's like Kingo or something like that. I think it's Kingo. His cameraman was so funny. That was a really good part of the film. And a few other bits of jokes here and there. But a lot of the bits earlier on with the school bit, that didn't really work for me. But yeah, I'm going to go 7 out of 10. I think this film is very entertaining, very interesting. If you're a fan of the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, you should watch this film. But yeah, one thing I forgot to talk about, the deviants. Why were they in this film? Take them out, it makes the plot so much better, so much easier. And when he became like this final form of a deviant, he just hopped into the third act. He didn't belong there. It was just so forced, messy. Yeah, the deviants just did not need to be in this film. But yeah, anyway, let me know your guys' thoughts on Eternals. This film is quite big, and this year's had a lot of Marvel content, and we aren't even done yet. We've still got Hawkeye and Spider-Man No Way Home. So yeah, I cannot wait for Spider-Man No Way Home. And Hawkeye, let's just say I might have a surprise for you guys when it gets to Hawkeye, and you'll know what nearer the time. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye guys.